Did you have an extraordinary week? There you go. I want to kind of go over what we talked about last week a little bit, okay? So, what did we say a leader was last week? That's why you should have brought that back, right? An ordinary person living an ordinary life in an extraordinary way. That's why I asked you, did you have an extraordinary week? Okay. And we talked about the foundation of personal leadership is what? What? Trust. Yeah. And trust leads to what? Faith in others and in yourself. And that leads to what? Action. And that leads to changes, right? Innovation. You're going to hear a lot about that over your lifetime. It leads to innovation. Change leads to innovation. Because sometimes change don't work. You got to figure out another way to do stuff. Because you want to change, and the way you want to change don't work, and that's where innovation comes from. And then that leads to success, doesn't it? Yeah. And success leads to respect from people as a manager, right? As a human being, as a member of this fraternity. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And we talked about the destroyer of trust. And a lot of other things too. What is the destroyer? What? Come on, guys. Lying is the destroyer of trust. Now, I'm going to give you a clue how you can always make pretty good decisions in life. It don't always work, but most of the time it does. If you come to where you got to make a decision where to do something or not do something, everybody follow me on this. And you want to know how to make the decision. Think a little bit ahead of time and say, tomorrow, if somebody asks me about this, will I have to lie about it? And I say, if you're going to have to lie about it, don't do it. That makes sense? That's pretty common. Yeah, okay. I want to tell you about the rest of the story. I told you some stories last week. And remember I told you I made a decision as a young man to open up that new motel in Birmingham. And the guy, I got a choice and the other guy didn't. And I trained him to be the night auditor. And when I came back to this town from 1972 to 1998, he was still the manager down there. Did I tell you that? He was still the manager. And about 3 years later, I told you, they fired him, and he was managing the filling station down there from Lowe's, right? And I thought many, many times, because I got out of the what? I got out of the what? Boat! I got out of the boat. I didn't go back to the boat where I knew things were, right? I got out of the boat. I took a chance. I decided I was going to work on some water, right? And that made all the difference. Now, when I told my wife that, she said, you wouldn't have been there for 30 years. And she's probably right. I wouldn't have been there. But he was. And it just sends cold chills up and down my spine to think instead of all that experience I had, I would have still been the manager down at that motel after, 20-something years? Choices make a difference. And I told you about that little training thing I did with the guys in the truck, right? And I said, the other people who trained, they had to have riders with them the next day, didn't I? And I said, I trained them, and when they would come into the training class, the guys were doing the orders before they came to class, and when they left, nobody rode with them. So when they called me from corporate headquarters, they said, Jim, how many riders will you need the day after you train your employees? What do you think I told them? 0. I'm stepping out of the boat again, right, guys? I'm using faith in my ability to know what I'm going to do because I hadn't really done it, and I'm telling them, don't send me anybody. I got a call from a guy who had my same job in Mobile. And he said, Jim, I'd like to come up there. He actually kind of begged me to come up there. I said, well, Patrick, if you want to come on. So we called it Flip Day. On the day we flipped from the old computer program to the new computer program, Patrick was in my office with all my dispatchers. It was as if nothing had happened. Nothing. It was just like the day before. Everybody knew what to do. So Patrick's in there. He ain't got anything to do because he came up here to help us. And guess what? We don't need no help, right? I want you to remember this. So I go around there. I said, Patrick. He said, Jim, what'd you do? So I sat there and I explained to him. You know how boring that was. You heard it last week, right? So I explained to Patrick what all we did and how we did it and how we worked the team together and how we trained them. And so I got through and I hesitated a little bit. He didn't say anything. And I said, Patrick, what do you think? And he said, Jim, when you give a man a whale to eat, it takes a while to eat it. And that's in there, and I messed it up. It's in your book. Think about it. Leaders, a lot of times, are feeding people something they cannot comprehend, they cannot understand. That's what leaders do. Leaders get out of the boat. And the last thing we want to talk about is, as a leader, you become what? You become in the organization, in the business you're in your life. You become a Petra, right? A rock. You become solid, man. That's what leaders are. Okay, let's go into the next conversation we're going to have tonight. Flip it over. Some of you will. And the question I got to ask you is, as an individual, where is your home of leadership? And what is the home of leadership? Okay, what does it say? H.O.M.E. What? Leaders are honest, they're open, they're motivated, and they're enthusiastic. What the heck does that mean? Leaders are honest with themselves and their others. Leaders know their strengths and weaknesses. Remember that little thing I gave y'all last week in the first presentation about how I sat down and determined what I was going to tell the employees they could expect out of me? Remember that? If you don't, go read it. That takes a while to think about those things. And it brings to, when I was sitting where you are, I was active, I went home to see my dad one holiday. And I was having some problems. And I went and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I need to tell you some things. And my dad said, son, you don't tell me anything, I tell you. So, of course, that kind of shut it down, didn't it? So about 2 o'clock that morning, I got up and I went into our dining room table and I sat down and I wrote every question that was on my mind. Would I have to go to Vietnam? Would I graduate from college? Would I get a good job? Would I get married? Would I be able to make a living? And I wrote down there's a whole list of those things. I still got that list and I go back and look at it. I suggest you do the same thing. When you go home tonight and you get quiet, just sit down there and say, what's the big questions for me? I was a sophomore in college. And when I look back at that, and I say, would I be able to pay my loan off, my college loan? Because I owed the equivalent, when I graduated, the equivalent today of $25,000. I could have bought a new car for that kind of money. So I had to pay that off. Would I be able to pay my loan off? Because by that time, I'd already had a bunch of money borrowed up. So the thing is to know yourself. I want to read you something. Everybody go and get that McKinsey app. I'm sure you did, didn't you? Because you may think that this is a bunch of hooey. It's a bunch of hooey. McKinsey Insight. There's an app on there, and it talks about the 5 aspects of leadership. And I'm not going to tell you all of them, but one of them is meaning. Meaning. And it says, great leaders, I'm going to read you some of it. I hate to bore you, but we all recognize leaders who infuse their life and work with a sense of meaning. They convey energy and enthusiasm because the leadership goal is important to them personally, because they are actively enjoying its pursuit, and because their work plays to their strengths. How do they know their strengths, right? Plays to their strengths. I'm going to skip down. Ah, crap. Have y'all got this? Mine kind of messed up. My dadgum screen's messed up. Centered leaders often talk about how their purpose appeals to something greater than themselves, and the importance of conveying their passion to others. Time and again, we heard that sharing meaning to inspire colleagues requires leaders to become great storytellers, touching hearts as well as minds. That is the foremost management consulting firm in the world that just said that and just talked to me, didn't it? So this is not hooey. This is real stuff. Open to change. We talked about the difference between a caretaker and an innovator last week, didn't we? The caretaker is the one that keeps all the graves neat and clean and all that kind of stuff. And an innovator is, he got to do all that stuff. He's got to do all that. He's got to keep everything like management wants it, but he's going to do something more. And they create value. Change comes to a lot of things. What happened last year in football that changed? Fundamentally changed the way people played the game, the players played the game. There was a penalty that we never had until last year. What was it? Come on, I mean. Targeting. They had to learn a whole new way to tackle people, man. The rules changed. Guess what? In life, they change. Almost every day. Yours is changing more than mine was. Every day almost. I mean, new apps, new, you name it, you know it. The other thing that we had to confront last year, if you're on the page, the first page of the conversation, what did it say? Hazing. Oh, hazing. Now that doesn't mean you got hazing site or, you know what hazing is, don't you? All right. We had to figure out a way to fundamentally change the program you're going through this year. And we had to break with tradition of this campus, of fraternities in general. Because we will not survive in the modern world if we haze. The fraternity won't survive. The chapter won't survive. Fraternities will not survive. It has to change fundamentally. You guys are going to be on the forefront of making sure what we've done this year carries forward. And you're going to have to fight tradition. And you're going to have to say, you don't care what they do down the street. What's important is what we do here. How we change here. How we create a new tradition here in our chapter. Am I making any sense, guys? Yes, sir. I hope so. Because I hope 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you get to come back to this house and bring your kids and grandkids like I do. And unless we change that, you will not be able to do that. If you get nothing else out of this class we're talking about in these conversations, get that, okay? Okay? Because it is a joy for me to come back here with my little 7-year-old grandkid. And it was a joy to come back here with my son. And it will be the same for you. So open to change. Be open to change. Motivated to serve others. This is tough too. Motivated to serve. H, honesty. O, open. M, motivated to serve. That's tough. I used to manage restaurants, and I had a waitress. Her name was Helen, and she was down here at the Old Stafford, and I managed one of the best restaurants in town at the time, and she was a super waitress. And she did special things. She would take that baked potato and she would load it up. Y'all know when I had a loaded baked potato. Back then they didn't do anything. They just served baked potatoes mostly with butter and sour cream. Well, she would go back there and she'd put butter and sour cream and cheese and bacon on it, and she'd serve it. None of the other waitresses were doing that. But everybody liked Helen. And so I had waitresses that come up to me. I'm the manager, right? And they say, Jim, you got to stop Helen from doing that. I said, doing what? Well, then they told me what she was doing. I said, hell no. Oh, by the way, hell is not a curse word. Hell is a destination. So let's get that straight right off, right, huh? Okay? Hell is a destination. All right, I said, hell no. You start doing it. When you start doing different things, people around you want to grab it away from you. Want to have somebody stop you from doing it. You're making them look bad. Didn't we say that when Peter stepped out of the boat, someone said, we don't do things like that, Peter. Get your butt back in the boat. It's hard. Those guys right back there, on that little composite back there, 2003. I got a call in December of 2002 and said, Jim, the accountant called me and said, y'all have only got enough money to make it to March. Wow. I said, John, what are we going to do? I said, So I said, let me get Hardy and Smith down here, and we'll see what we can do. So we went down there, the two guys up there, and they got together, and Matt Hardy and Steve Smith, and said, fellas, we got to change, or we're not going to make it to the end of the year. And they came back and they got with the chapter. There were, how many is in your pledge class now? 43. You know how many was in the chapter? Take a guess. 22. 22. So they got back. They had one party that semester. One. And they paid for it themselves. And at the end of the year, they had $2,000 in the bank. And the next pledge class they had 25 pledges. Now that was when pledge classes are not as large as they are now. But if it hadn't have been for those guys realizing they had to do something different, they had to be open to change, they had to be motivated, you wouldn't be sitting here. This new house wouldn't be sitting here. That's why that composite's right there. Now, there's going to be another composite in this room as far as I'm concerned. The composite you're going to be on. The composite you're going to be on. And the composite these actives are going to be on. Because I'm going to be able to point to that, and I hope everybody, and say, those were the men who changed our traditions and saved our asses. Your composite's going to be in this room because of that and because of the way I feel about it. Enthusiastic about what they're doing. Hey, do I need to tell you what that is? Enthusiastic. I'm pretty enthusiastic about what I do. Always have been, right? I read a book. I was a pledge, and Jim Hill was an active, and a bunch of us, 5 of us, went to Massachusetts to sell dictionaries door to door. And we went to a sales training class in Nashville, Tennessee. And I got a book out of that class. I had to pay for that one. But it's how I raised, the book title was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. It's right there. Frank Bedker's book. And in one of the chapters he was talking about playing baseball, and he said he just drug around the bases and everything. He was a pro baseball player. And the coach called him over there and said, Frank, you do pretty good, but you don't have any enthusiasm. And she said, I made up my mind I was going to be the most enthusiastic ball player on that team. And man, I started zipping that ball around. I started hitting those bases. And he said, I learned something. You can't think enthusiasm, but you can act it into your brain. And what did it say? To be enthusiastic, act enthusiastic. Right? That makes sense. Your actions can control your brain, just like your butt can, right? Your ass control your brain. Didn't we talk about that last time? Yes, controlling you, buddy. So if you can train your ass to sit in a chair, you can get an education. The action is sitting in the chair. And then you get an accumulation of, I got an A, I got a C, I got an A, I got a B, I got all A's. Because you trained yourself to sit in the chair, you can get enthusiastic about making good grades. The action follows the feeling. So, leaders are honest, open, motivated to serve, and enthusiastic. And I've got in here, what is goodwill worth? You know, Helen created a lot of goodwill because the customers liked her and everything. And you, if you do what's right out there, you're going to create a lot of goodwill for our fraternity, for our chapter. Have y'all ever heard goodwill? You know what goodwill is? Does it have a value? Does goodwill have a value? You can actually amortize goodwill. You didn't know that. It's an accounting term. If you pay more for a company than its assets are, you categorize that as the goodwill that was created because the company was worth more than its assets. And if you buy that company, you get to amortize goodwill. You get to show it on your balance sheet. So goodwill is valuable to an organization. You can actually book it. Book it, man. Okay. Now, so where is the home of leadership? Where is the home of these things we've been talking about now? Where does it reside inside of you? If you flip the page, I'll give you a hint. The hint is, leaders don't think about acting out these traits. leaders don't have to think about acting out these traits. Why? Why don't leaders have to think about acting out these traits? Because it's in their heart. It's in their heart. It ain't in the brain. And there's a word that goes with this. Courage. Did you know where the word courage came from? Have you ever heard of cour? It's a French term, right? What's it mean? Huh? It's heart. And courage, it's on the page over here, guys. Courage means to have a strong heart. And to be honest, open, motivated, and enthusiastic. You have to have courage. Because some of you are going to be treated like Helen when you exemplify those things. Okay? They come from your heart, my friend, and you don't have to think about them. If you flip over, I want to tell you what I've told all my employees. And I'm going to make a point about this. So this is important. There are 4 types of people in the world. I used to say 4 types of employees. And you got a copy of it. 4 types of people. There's the arsonist. And those scutters are always building fires, stirring up crap, causing problems, sticking their nose in other people's business, starting rumors, putting things on social media they shouldn't put them on. They just love to stir up fires. And you got them in every organization. I had them as employees. Then there's another type of employee or person, and they are called what? They're called stokers. They don't start the fire. They ain't got enough guts to start the fire. I don't call it guts, stupidity. But they're right there with them. They are egging on the stokers, man. I mean, they're egging on the, get me right, arsonist. They're throwing fuel on the fire. They're saying, yeah, you're right. They don't give a damn about us. That dental fraternity don't care about us. You're right. We need to do this and that. So they just make it bigger, right? Those people, thank God, are not many. But the majority of the next people of the next kind. What's the next kind? Rubberneckers. Lord God. They see the smoke and the fire and they go running over there and they stand around. They don't add nothing to it or nothing, but they just like watching it, right? They just stand around and watch it. They'll nod their head and look at it. Man, this is terrible. You know. So they get the arsonist and the stoker, they feed on the rubberneckers. They like to have them around. I'm getting to a point here in a minute. There is a person in any group or any organization that if they have one, I tell my employees this, I had 7. If there's one of us here that's this, if there's one in your group that's this, we're well off. We're well off. And what kind of guy is that? Come on, you read it. The firefighter. Now we're fixing to make a point here. The firefighter comes up here and says, guys, y'all don't know what you're talking about. The dental fraternities supplied us with our traditions, our values, our principles, and they're here to help us, really, if we do the right things. You got it wrong. You made a mistake. You're the reasons we are here where we are now. What does it take to run into a burning house? Didn't we talk about courage? What does it take? A strong heart to be a firefighter. It takes a strong heart. And then I would say to my employee, what kind of person are you? What kind of person do you want to be? And you know what? I actually had one of my employees that thought I was talking about her, and she started crying. I said, no, I'm not talking about you in particular. You just never know, you know what I mean? I just, in general, right? And you see, I left employees down here on one of them. This is real life stuff, man. This is how I lived and died. This is how I managed employees. This is why my employees were the best. This is why I didn't have a bunch of rumors going on all the time and a bunch of people looking next door to see what the hell was going on. It wasn't none of their business, right? They focused on what their business was. I wanted every one of them to be firefighters. I wanted every one of them to nip it in the bud. When the damn spark started, it stopped. It never got to be a fire. No one is born to be a leader. No one is born to be a firefighter. It takes a lot of training to be a firefighter, to know how to run into a burning building, to get that strong heart, that courage to do it, because leaders aren't born, are they? It reminds me of that tadpole story. I got it right. Y'all know what the tadpole story is. There it is. You make yourself, you're not like a tadpole. You make yourself into being a leader. You make yourself have courage. Remember this. Leadership is not what you are, being manager or anything like that, CEO. It's not where you are. It's about who you are. And there's only one person that's going to decide who they are, and that's you. You sit down on a piece of paper and you say, this is what I am, who I am. This is what I want to do. And then put it back and keep it. And when you get grown, dig it out. Or every now and then, dig it out. I want to give you a link you might want to go to. Michael Hyatt, I get it every day. It's super. Michael Hyatt, H-Y-A-T-T. And he sends me something on leadership every day. And I read it every day. You see these books right here? Leaders want to know as much as they can about as much as they can. I told my grandson that the other day. That's the meaning of an education. 7 years old. I said, Connor, here's what it means to get an education. You want to learn as much as you can about as much as you can. I was an accounting guy. For 2 years, I took a course in operations, how to manage a utility, an ICS course. I took a developmental move to go to West Blockton. Y'all remember me telling you about that. I was a district accounting manager. Guess what I had to do, because that level was below my level as a district accounting manager? I took the first developmental management move in the power company to go to West Blockton. I took a demotion to go to West Blockton. I stepped out on water again. I've always been stepping out on that water, guys. You don't do it every day. You don't get a chance to do it every day. But when you get a chance to do it, step out there. You may sink, but somebody will help you up. Somebody will help you. And take advantage of what you can do. The company paid for me to take that course. It took me 2 years. I knew more than most engineers knew about the electrical distribution system because they didn't learn it to be electrical engineer in college. I learned it out of those books. I had prepared myself for the next step so that when I did take it, I had a district superintendent, engineer drive me around the first day I was there. And he started, and I said, "Oh, that's a transformer, that's a cutout, and he said, "How do you know that?" I'm an accountant, right? Because I prepared myself to step out of the boat. I did something extra. I went home, I worked every day as a district accounting manager in Haleyville, Alabama, and I went home and studied every night. My son does that every night. Yesterday he's 47 years old. He just passed another certification. It's going to be a lifelong thing for you all. Michael Hyde. Guys, are we doing anything? Am I just putting you to sleep? I hope not. What did it say? I just read it. Meaning, my boss said that, "Jim, you are living proof that you don't have to be executive to lead the company." I did things in my department that spread to the Southern Company, to Georgia Power, to Gulf Power. And I looked at Kyle and I said, "Kyle, wait a minute, let me see if I got this right. You don't have to be anybody to be a leader." I chose to be where I was. When they came to me, my vice president said, "Jim," because I was on developmental moves, and he said, "We got to figure out a way to get you to corporate headquarters." There was two things wrong with that statement when the vice president told me that. Number one, figure out how to get me there. That didn't sound good to me. Number two, I didn't want to go there. I wanted to be where I was. So I didn't even think about it. I knew where my heart was. And so what did my heart say? Right in front of him in his desk. And I said, "Mr. So-and-so, I don't want to go to corporate headquarters." I kicked myself off the elevator. Because I knew myself. 3 years later, half the people in corporate headquarters were dismissed. There's an old song, if you want to listen to it. I think I can quote it. That when I grew up, have you ever heard that song, "Games People Play" by Joe South? It's good. It's good. Y'all read it. But anyway, it says, "The games people play, whiling away their hours in the ivory towers, never saying what they mean, never meaning what they say, until they covered up with flowers in the back of a black limousine." That ain't me, guys. It may be you, though. You know, we got Jerry Stewart. He was executive vice president of Southern Company right here. He and I were fraternity brothers at the same time here. He did stay on the elevator. I didn't want no part of it. That's what this is about. You make the determination, you make the choice. I could have gone to corporate headquarters, but that wasn't me. So it took a lot of courage. And when I went home, my wife said, "I can't believe you did that." She didn't understand. By that time, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out there where the customers were, be out there with real people and real situations. I loved it. No, I take that back. I didn't love it. I love my wife. Don't ever say you love a job. I have to quit myself from saying that sometimes. I enjoyed it. It was an enjoying thing to do. Love your wife. Enjoy your job. Have joy in what you do. Take joy in this fraternity. You're here. Love it. Now, next week, we're going to talk about time. Okay, this is a program I did from my office, by the way, H.O.M.E, in 1990s. This is a program that was going to be done for Alabama Power, and I was going to give this program to them. I retired. They kept putting it off. I said, they ain't waiting, I'm gone. So this program that you had tonight was a real program for real employees at Alabama Power in our department, company-wide, and I was going to lead it. Are we getting anywhere, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you enjoy being here? I'm enjoying you being here, right? Yes, sir. So next week, bring the paper with you. Give me mine back. Give me. You make notes on it? Yep. Okay. I knew I'd bring some extra. Bring your papers next week. And by the way, if you want to look at some of this stuff, there it is. Thank you, fellas. I appreciate it.